First and foremost, Australia sends its condolences to the family of J. Christopher Stevens, the late US Ambassador to Libya. We send our condolences to his family and to Hillary Clinton and his other colleagues in the State Department. The Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations provides that diplomats enjoy inviolability and that the receiving state is under obligation to take all appropriate steps to prevent any attack on the diplomat's person, freedom or dignity. Diplomats work to get peaceful resolutions to international problems. They work to bridge the gaps between nations and peoples. They work to resolve differences and to prevent war and conflict. So there is a special sadness and a special tragedy about the death of a diplomat going about his or her duty. This is very sad. I've spoken to Jeffrey Bleich, the US Ambassador in Canberra, today. We exchanged messages last night. We spoke today about this. I'll speak to him further. He said he appreciated Australia's concerns. For Libya too, a message of support and a message of condolence. Libya continues to have security problems. Here is a country that was burdened with a dictatorship for decades. The people turned out, this fragile democracy, the people of this vulnerable state, turned out on July 7 and voted in the first free elections. They elected a government of brave Democrats, and they deserve the support of the world as they move beyond this tragedy in their internal affairs. September 12 was the date of the transfer of government, when newly elected people were taking over from an interim government, the first elected head of government in 30 years, Prime Minister Chagouur, Deputy Prime Minister in the previous interim government. The next milestone will be the election of a 60-member constituent authority to oversee the development of a new constitution, with general elections to be held in 2013. Their economy has been disrupted by civil war, the cut in oil output. It's a potentially rich country, but last year the economy contracted 42%. Libya deserves our support. The overall number of displaced people is great. There are armed militia in Libya. Libya is in our thoughts as they do the right thing, having spoken eloquently of the tragedy involved here.
Minister, how much of a concern is it that Al-Qaeda may be able to exploit a country like Libya and taking hold there, getting a foothold in a country like Libya, if in fact it's proven that they were responsible?
Well, we recently marked the 11th anniversary of September 11, a terrorist attack organised by Al-Qaeda. The fact is that while Al-Qaeda has had its leadership killed, arrested, disrupted, it has a presence in at least half a dozen countries in the world. It has been found to be operating in Syria in the circumstances of civil war that apply there. It should be no surprise if it's got a presence in Libya. So many other armed groups are operating in Libya in the wreckage and the despoilation that followed the collapse of the Gaddafi regime. It is of concern.
Are there any implications from this incident for our security at our embassies in the region? Do we need to upgrade security? Does it need to be reviewed? There's been some criticism of the way the security was handled outside the US embassy in Benghazi, at the US premises in Benghazi. What are the implications for our security?
I'm asking the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade to take all appropriate measures, but I do so knowing that, having visited our embassies in the Arab world, having learnt that no safety, no precautions is going to be absolute of its nature. Embassies and consulates and the work that goes with them is vulnerable. Diplomats are unarmed. Diplomats have got to be out there in the community. They've got to be involved looking at aid projects, travelling around parts of a country like Benghazi that are considered unsafe. They haven't got the option of staying locked up in an armed fortress of an embassy building. They've got to be out there bridging gaps between people, and this makes it particularly tragic that a diplomat lays down his life. 6 US ambassadors killed, the last one, I'm told, 30 years ago. It doesn't happen often.
Do you believe that Kevin Rudd is taking up the fight to Liberals and is a long-form media interview again?
All of us are. All of us are taking up the fight against the Liberals. Leave aside the outrages in Queensland. Look at what's happening in New South Wales with education budgets being attacked by a state coalition government. I want to point out, as a former Premier of New South Wales, someone who was proud to be called the Education Premier, who increased education spending by over 100%. This attack on New South Wales schools, private and public, is a tragedy, and it's a condemnation, and it reflects what the last coalition government did in New South Wales. And it is a warning above all. What's happening in the states now with these attacks on public services, this orgy of sacking public servants, is just a warm-up act for the main performance, which is Tony Abbott. That's the significance of this.
Minister, there have been some suggestions that it might be somehow inappropriate that Mr Rudd's reappeared while the Prime Minister is still on personal leave. What's your view about the timing of that?
Look, all of us in the Labor Party are united in condemning what the state coalition governments are doing.
He's advertised, as I understand it, for a Chinese-speaking advisor. Is he kind of encroaching on your patch a bit again?
No, not at all. Not at all. He's a former Prime Minister and absolutely entitled to be engaged on these great questions, as John Howard in a recent speech is, as Paul Keating in a recent speech is, as Bob Hawke is, Malcolm Fraser is. All former Prime Ministers are entitled, indeed duty-bound, to comment on public policy. We want them to. What's the point of having been a Prime Minister if you can't contribute to your country's policies? He's absolutely entitled to.
You don't see any leadership ambition or implications in his
Not remotely. Not remotely.
Can I take you back to the issue you were speaking about before? And I know you've talked about this in other fora, but can you just take us through again the role of Ambassador Stevens in Melinda Taylor's release?
Yeah, well, there was a period before we had our ambassador on the ground, before David Ritchie was able to get a visa and to get there from Rome. He was our accredited ambassador in Libya, resident as our ambassador to Italy in Rome. There was a time before he could get on the ground and start talking to people in the Libyan government when we needed assistance from the embassies of friendly countries in Tripoli. And Christopher Stevens, as US ambassador, made representations for Melinda Taylor, and I was very grateful when I heard about it. And those representations raised the issue so that when I was able to get into Tripoli myself, being in the region, I got a meeting with the Prime Minister, the then interim Prime Minister of Libya, and with his Deputy Foreign Minister Aziz, and that was very, very helpful. But the softening up, the original submissions, the raising of the case was assisted by the American diplomat who's now paid with his life for trying to assist Libya.
Just on another matter, we see suggestions today that the Dutch government may have some concerns about the turn of events that may lead to the super trawler being banned here in Australia. Have you had any contact from the Dutch government?
No, I haven't. I think Australia is duty bound to have a good look at any of this industrial fishing which vacuums fish out of our waters. We're entitled to do that. Absolutely entitled to do that. And all the recreational fishers in Australia, as well as professional fishers in Australia, are taking a keen interest in this. I mean, people who fish also vote, and they want the government of Australia to protect fish stocks which are so vulnerable to the industrialised vacuuming of fish out of our deep waters. I think you wouldn't find don't forget, fishing is the biggest recreation in Australia. You won't find a recreational fisher out there who won't applaud that the Australian government is protecting Australian fisheries.
President Karzai has voiced his concerns about a raid that Australian Special Forces took part in last week that ended up killing 2 Afghans. His office seems to be maintaining the line that Australia wasn't within its rights to carry out this raid. Have you had any contact with your counterparts?
I've read the briefings. I've spoken to our ambassador. I can't add anything to what my colleague Defence Minister Smith has said. Thanks, folks.